In happy circumstances of life, nobody likes to think about death because death marks an end of life, end of existence. And while living a good life, or even a strenuous life, or a wretched life, to think about death is very painful, abhorring. But death is a reality, as real as life. In science, we talk about the origin of life. In this subject, the life connotes living as opposed to non living. A living being is a being which has all the attributes of a living. And what are these attributes? That he or she will respire, will take food, will excrete, will reproduce, will respond to circumstances, respond to stimuli. These are the attributes of living. In the absence of these attributes, the material or the being is said to be dead. Those who study the spiritual science say that life is endowed with soul and death marks an end of the soul and it denotes the exit of the soul from the being. The soul then migrates to another body. So the body is mortal, whereas the soul is immortal. It remains, it always existed and will exist, and it will just pass on from one kind of frame, a body, to another, one kind of being to another. And there are different kinds of beings on this earth, and the soul is migrating in these forms. It stays for a certain amount of time in one frame and then leaves that frame to enter into another frame. You see, in another parlance, you can say that the death begins with the passing of gametes, passing of germ cells, or to put it in a broad perspective, with the beginning of reproductive activity, there seems to be an onset of the process of death. A number of examples can be cited to substantiate this point. You can take the example of a couple of fish, salmon, SALMON. You can take the example of eel, freshwater eel. It lives in fresh water, lays eggs in the sea. Similarly, the salmon lives in the sea and migrates up to the river to breed. The process of long migration of these animals makes them extremely exhausted and they finally die. You can take the example of an insect, a long insect that lives on the twigs of trees. It mimics the color of the twig. The female is an unduly long insect, and the male is a very small One. When the female wishes to copulate, the male is invited, the male feels flattered, moves towards the female, it bounds on the female, copulates with her, and after the insemination, after the male has transferred the sperms into the body of female, the female begins to devour the male. Same thing happens with the female scorpion. It also copulates with the male scorpion and then later on devours the male. So the reproductive activity for these males denotes the onset of death. This is the reason why some scientists say that with the migration or with the transfer of gametes, transfer of germplasm, there is an onset of death.